Tua Tagovailoa is one of the most accurate quarterbacks in NFL history. He led the league in passer rating in 2022, passing yards in 2023, completion percentage in 2024, and is second only to Joe Burrow in career completion percentage. With Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle on the outside, Miami's offense was being called the most dangerous unit in football. But even at the peak, the doubts never stopped. From the moment Tua entered the league, his arm strength was questioned. Not enough zip led to late throws turned into turnovers, and turnovers turned into a label. Tua turned the ball over. Then came the hits. Between 2019 and 2024, Tua suffered 4 documented concussions, enough to force real conversations about retirement while he was still a young player in the NFL. And early in his career, Miami never really fully committed to him. Under Brian Flores, Tua's job was always at stake. It wasn't until Mike McDaniel arrived that everything changed. Confidence replaced doubt, and the Dolphins paid Tua. 4 years, $212.4 million. But then came more losses, the mistakes piled up, and turnovers resurfaced. And behind the scenes, the locker room began to fracture. Midway through 2025, Tua was calling out teammates. Mike McDaniel was pushing back publicly. And the trust that once held everything together was gone. From throwing the game-winning touchdown as a true freshman in the 2018 National Championship, to leading the league in passing and quarterback efficiency, to spending the back end of the 2025 season on the bench. This is the rise and fall of Tua Tagovailoa. Before his name turned into a headline, there was a kid in Hawaii who slept with a football tucked under his arm. Not as a metaphor, literally. Tua Tagovailoa grew up in Ua Beach, and his father, Galu, began training him around the age of 2. And one of the first decisions Galu made was to force his son to throw left-handed, even though Tua was naturally right-handed. To this day, Tua still writes and eats with his right hand. Galu's reasoning was simple. He was the only lefty in his own family and wanted a left-handed child to share that trait with. And his choice came at a cost. Tua's mechanics were unusual, his throws awkward at times, and he lacked major arm strength. Still, by the time Tua reached St. Louis School in Honolulu, a school known nationally for producing quarterbacks, most notably Marcus Mariota, who had just won the Heisman Trophy in 2014, he delivered immediately. In his first season as a varsity starter, he threw for 2,583 yards, 33 touchdowns, and only 3 interceptions. But the margin for error was thin. Tua later explained in an interview with ESPN's Tom Rinaldi that when he didn't perform the way his dad expected him to, the belt was involved, along with other punishments. Tua finished high school as a 5-star recruit and the top-ranked dual-threat quarterback in the 2017 class. Even then, the biggest decision of his life wasn't fully his. Tua had envisioned playing closer to home, potentially in the Pac-12. But in his family, major decisions weren't negotiated. His father made the final call on where he would go to college, and that final call was Alabama. However, when Tua arrived in Tuscaloosa, nothing was handed to him, because in 2017 the offense belonged to Jalen Hurts. Hurts was 26-2 as a starter, undefeated in SEC play, and trusted to run a system built on control and defense. Tua was the backup, the insurance policy, the future if he was patient enough. But all of a sudden, Alabama found themselves down 13-0 in the national championship to Georgia. That's when Nick Saban made the wild decision to bench Jalen Hurts and put in the true freshman Tua Tagovailoa. Things continued to go downhill as Tua threw an interception. But then, down 20-7 with the season slipping away, there was 4th and goal from the 7. Tua rolled left, fired through traffic, touchdown to Calvin Ridley. Alabama was alive, and for the first time all night, Georgia felt it. One drive at a time, Alabama chipped away. A field goal, another stop. Late in the 4th quarter, the moment arrived. With the game tied up, Tua marched Alabama down the field into field goal range. The snap was clean, the hold was perfect, the kick wide left. Overtime. And in overtime, Georgia struck first, a 51-yard field goal. Alabama's margin disappeared. Then, disaster. The first play was a sack, 2nd and 26. But then, Tua launched a 41-yard strike to Devontae Smith for the walk-off championship win. From that night forward, Tua was the guy. And by 2018, the roster around Tua felt unfair. The wide receiver room consisted of Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, Devontae Smith, and later Jalen Waddle. This wasn't the old Bama offense. This was space, tempo, and pressure layered on top of elite talent, and Tua became the engine. He had more touchdown passes than incompletions against Arkansas, a perfect 8 for 8 with 2 touchdowns in one half against Louisiana, 387 yards and 5 total touchdowns against Texas A&M. By the end of the season, Tua had 43 passing touchdowns, just 6 interceptions, a 69% completion rate, and an NCAA record 199.4 passer rating as he finished second in Heisman voting. By December, Alabama was undefeated and chasing another title. Tua entered the playoff on a surgically repaired ankle, an injury that would have sidelined most quarterbacks. In the semifinal, the standard didn't dip. It exploded. Against Oklahoma, Tua went 24 of 27 for 318 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. Alabama advanced to the national championship carrying momentum, confidence, and the weight of dominance. But that wasn't enough to get him past Trevor Lawrence's Clemson Tigers in the 44-16 loss. By 2019, the expectations were crushing. Anything less than perfection felt like failure, but somehow the production stayed absurd. Through 9 games, Tua had 2,840 passing yards, 33 touchdowns, just 3 interceptions, 11.3 yards per attempt, and a 206.9 passer rating. But in October, one awkward hit changed the rhythm. Tua suffered a high ankle sprain and surgery followed. When he returned, things only got worse. A sack caused his knee to be driven into the ground, causing his hip to dislocate, as well as suffering a broken nose and concussion. Following the season, Tua declared for the draft, but questions followed him. Questions about what his body had already been through. 2 ankle surgeries, a hip dislocation, multiple missed games, and there was one other thing teams noticed: his arm strength. The concern wasn't accuracy, it was whether he'd be able to throw with enough power to hit tight windows or receivers downfield. So, as the draft unfolded, franchises made clean, conservative decisions. Joe Burrow went first after a season with 60 total touchdowns and a Heisman, Chase Young at 2, Jeff Okudah, then Andrew Thomas. Then, at pick number 5, Miami was on the board. Tua became the first left-handed quarterback drafted in the first round since Tim Tebow.
The Miami Dolphins select Tua Tagovailoa.
And the expectations were sky high. But Miami didn't rush Tua, because they didn't need to. Through the first 6 weeks, Miami was winning with defense. Top 10 in takeaways, one of the highest blitz rates in football, and Ryan Fitzpatrick was embracing chaos with over 7.5 yards per attempt. The Dolphins were competitive again, unexpectedly so. Then came the bye. At 3-3 with the playoff picture suddenly realistic, Brian Flores made the call. The rookie was in. And Tua's first NFL snap, an Aaron Donald strip sack. From that point on, Miami simplified everything. In his first 3 starts, Tua averaged under 25 pass attempts per game. The Dolphins leaned on defense, field position, and short throws, asking Tua to manage games. It worked on paper. Miami went 5-3 in games Tua started, but the tension was obvious. In Week 11 against Denver, Tua threw for just 83 yards. When Miami fell behind, Fitzpatrick came in. That pattern kept repeating. When things stayed clean, Tua stayed in. When things got messy, the leash shortened. But then, against Cincinnati in Week 13, Miami let him throw, as Tua attempted 39 passes and responded with 296 yards and a touchdown, his first real glimpse of rhythm across 4 quarters. A week later, against Kansas City, he had 316 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and 1 rushing touchdown. Back-to-back weeks, he earned Rookie of the Week honors. But the floor was still fragile. In Week 16 against Las Vegas, Tua finished with 94 yards and once again watched from the sideline late as Fitzpatrick tried to rescue the game.
Gunslinger Ryan Fitzpatrick!
Then came Week 17. Win and Miami makes the playoffs. Tua was asked to do more than ever before as he put up 361 passing yards, a career high. But it came with a cost. 3 interceptions in a 56-26 loss to the Bills. Year 2 was supposed to feel easier. In April, the Dolphins even drafted wide receiver Jalen Waddle, Tua's former Alabama teammate, with the 6th overall pick. But instead, everything got worse. The Miami Dolphins had Eric Studesville and George Godsey as co-offensive coordinators, which didn't work out. They had no true offensive line anchor.
Sack!
And a run game averaging just 3.7 yards per carry. The whispers also never stopped. Trade rumors, Deshaun Watson speculation, and a head coach who, by multiple records, never fully bought in. It later came out that Flores wasn't shy about telling Tua he preferred Mac Jones, the quarterback taken after him in the same draft. Against New England in Week 1, Tua completed 19 of 26 passes for 199 yards and 2 touchdowns, as Waddle caught his first NFL touchdown that afternoon. A week later against Buffalo, pressure collapsed the pocket again and again until the hits added up. Tua suffered fractured ribs.
It walk off, but obviously, Matt, in a lot of pain.
When he returned in London nearly a month later, the stat line suggested progress. 33 completions, over 300 yards, and 2 touchdowns. But the loss told a harsher truth. Miami was 1-5. 2 games later, they were 1-7. That's when Tua flipped the script. Against Baltimore, he came off the bench and changed the rhythm of the game with 8 completions, 158 yards, and a rushing touchdown. The next week against the Jets, he had 27 completions on 33 throws, 273 yards, and 2 touchdowns. During the winning streak, Tua's completion percentage hovered around 70%. Drives stayed on schedule. Mistakes stayed low. Against the Giants, he completed 21 passes in the first half alone, something no Dolphins quarterback had done since Dan Marino. 7 straight wins, from 1-7 to playoff relevance. But even then, nothing felt secure. After a brutal 34-3 Week 17 loss and a Chargers win later that day, Miami was eliminated again. And days later, Brian Flores was fired, despite back-to-back winning seasons. Owner Stephen Ross later admitted things had reached a pretty bad place between Flores, the front office, and the quarterback. And for the first time, the Dolphins chose Tua.
Tyreek Hill has been traded from Kansas City to Miami. That man is now a Dolphin.
Miami sent 5 draft picks to Kansas City for Tyreek Hill, including a 2022 first-rounder, then immediately gave him a 4-year, $120 million extension, including $72.2 million guaranteed. This wasn't about waiting to see what Tua could be. This was a declaration. This was trusting your QB to be able to launch balls deep after being criticized for a lack of arm strength his whole career. Mike McDaniel arrived days later with a system built on speed, and Hill was the final piece. Pair him with Jalen Waddle, who had just posted 104 catches as a rookie. Suddenly, Miami had 2 of the fastest receivers in football lined up on every snap. From week 1, the numbers reflected the shift. Against New England, Tua threw for 270 yards in an efficient win, improving to 4-0 against Bill Belichick. Then, week 2 against the Ravens arrived. Miami fell behind early, then further. Down 35-14 in the fourth quarter, the Dolphins lit it up. By the time it ended, Tua had thrown for 469 yards and 6 touchdowns, tying a franchise record held by Dan Marino. And Miami had completed a comeback teams had failed 711 straight times since 2011. By midseason, Tua was the league leader in passer rating, the league leader in yards per attempt, and had one of the lowest interception rates among starters. Against Detroit, he completed 80% of his passes for 382 yards. For a stretch, the conversation around Tua changed entirely. Then, everything slowed down. It started in late September against Buffalo. Tua took a hit and stumbled getting up.
Oh, my goodness, that's an awful sight to see.
4 days later in Cincinnati, Tua got sacked and was carted off the field, diagnosed with a concussion. And when he wasn't on the field, the offense lost its tempo. The spacing still existed, the speed was still there, but the rhythm was gone. When Tua returned in Week 7, he threw for 261 yards, then followed it with 382 yards and 3 touchdowns, completing 80% of his passes. On Christmas Day in Green Bay, Tua threw for 310 yards, but the rhythm cracked late. 3 fourth-quarter interceptions, the final one sealing the loss. The next day, the silence returned. Tua had suffered another concussion. He didn't play again that season. The concussions became such an issue that Tua admitted he'd considered retirement that offseason. But Tua wasn't one to back down easily. Tagovailoa began the 2023 season by throwing for 466 yards and 3 touchdowns in a 36-34 win against the Chargers. 2 weeks later, Miami reached a speed no defense could survive. Because against Denver, the Dolphins piled up 70 points, and Tua threw 4 touchdowns while the offense rushed for 350 yards. By the end of September, Tua had been named AFC Offensive Player of the Month. By year's end, Tua led the entire NFL with 4,624 passing yards, becoming the first Dolphins quarterback to do that since Dan Marino in 1992. Career highs followed: 29 touchdowns, 388 completions, 17 starts, and Tua was even named a Pro Bowl starter. On paper, it was everything Miami had hoped for when they drafted him. But football doesn't live on paper. When December and the cold weather rolled around, the Dolphins lost their final 2 games to the Ravens and Bills. And then in the playoffs at Arrowhead in the brisk, cold air, Tua threw for 199 yards, with 1 touchdown and 1 interception. The stat line wasn't disastrous, but it was by no means enough to win a game as the Dolphins fell 7-26. Still, the organization believed the flashes were worth investing in. So, in July, the Dolphins committed fully, signing Tua to a 4-year, $212.4 million contract extension, locking him in through 2028, over $50 million per year. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle remained the engine, two of the fastest receivers in football, stretching defenses horizontally and vertically on every snap. Mike McDaniel's offense stayed intact, built around timing, spacing, and anticipation rather than improvisation, and Tua was expected to be the stabilizer. In the opener, he threw for 336 yards, calmly guiding Miami downfield late to set up the game-winning field goal. Through the early weeks, his numbers stayed steady. Completion rates hovered near 70%, turnovers stayed low, and Miami's offense functioned best when the ball came out on time. Then, on a scramble, Tua lowered his shoulder into contact. The collision didn't look violent, but the aftermath did. It was his third diagnosed concussion in 2 years. Miami placed him on injured reserve, forcing a minimum 4-game absence. Independent neurologists were involved. Football became secondary. But when he did return, the numbers followed him back. In his first game back, he completed 28 of 38 passes for 234 yards, keeping Miami alive until a walk-off field goal decided it. A week later, against Buffalo, he delivered one of the most efficient performances of his career, completing 25 of 28 passes, a career-best 89.3%, and leading a game-tying drive in the final 2 minutes. Across the middle stretch of the season, Tua became the first quarterback in NFL history to throw 40-plus passes, multiple touchdowns, 300-plus yards, and 0 interceptions across 3 games in the same season. Over that span, he joined Dan Marino as the only Dolphins quarterback with 3 consecutive 300-yard games. Even with availability hanging over the season, Tua protected the football, finishing with just 7 interceptions in 11 games, while reaching 100 career touchdown passes. However, because Tua missed some games, the Dolphins fell just short of the playoffs at 8-9. But 2025 was supposed to be the year Miami finally broke through. Supposed to be. In the season opener, Tua produced just 114 passing yards, as 3 turnovers erased any chance of rhythm, and that margin only shrank as the season moved forward. Defenses sat on routes. Corners waited instead of retreating. Safeties refused to open windows early. Then, in Week 4 of the 2025 NFL season against the Jets, Tyreek Hill suffered a severe left knee injury, ending his season and requiring surgery. All of a sudden, spacing tightened, windows closed faster, and the offense had to live in places it wasn't designed to survive. Against the Chargers, Tua had 3 interceptions. The next week in Cleveland, 3 more. All of a sudden, people started calling him Tua turn the ball over. 6 interceptions in 2 games, just 1 touchdown pass. Only 305 total passing yards across both games combined. Tua went 4 straight games under 175 passing yards, and the advanced numbers told the same story. By December, Tua had 15 interceptions, second most in the league, a minus .06 EPA per dropback, among the worst for qualifying quarterbacks, and a 36.7 QBR, 30th in the league. To make matters worse, following a 3-interception game against the Chargers, Tua refused to take the blame and instead called out his teammates.
We have guys showing up to player-only meetings late, guys not showing up to player-only meetings. There's a lot that goes into that.
In the middle of a lost season, the Dolphins quarterback was publicly questioning whether his teammates even cared enough to show up. And that's when things shifted, because within 24 hours, Mike McDaniel pushed back hard. After a loss as the franchise quarterback, that's not the forum to displace that, McDaniel said. It was a misguided representation. For the first time since he arrived in Miami, McDaniel didn't protect Tua. Then came Monday night, where Tua had just 65 passing yards, an interception, and 2 sacks that killed drives before they could begin. And 2 days after that loss pushed Miami out of contention, the Dolphins made a crazy decision. They were benching Tua and turning to 7th-round rookie Quinn Ewers. And now, the one coach who believed in him, the one who built a system based around his strengths, Mike McDaniels, is gone. So that begs the question, what's next for Tua Tagovailoa? At his best, Tua was one of the most efficient quarterbacks the league had seen in years. Across his peak stretch, he completed nearly 70% of his passes, finished near the top of the league in passer rating, and led the NFL in passing yards. In Mike McDaniel's system, Tua consistently ranked among the league leaders in time to throw, often releasing the ball in under 2.5 seconds. That wasn't a flaw, that was the design. Because when the Dolphins built around him, they leaned fully into what he did best. They surrounded him with elite speed, receivers who could separate instantly, an offense that turned slants, crossers, and glance routes into explosive plays. And the results were real. Miami finished near the top of the league in yards per play, explosive pass rate, and early down efficiency during Tua's peak seasons. But those same numbers revealed the problem. Tua's production dropped sharply when the structure broke. Under pressure, his efficiency fell fast. When forced to go past his first read, his yards per attempt dipped and turnovers climbed. And even though Miami doesn't want him anymore, they don't really have a choice. Tua's 4-year, $212.4 million extension signed in 2024 included $167 million guaranteed. In 2026 alone, the Dolphins are on the hook for $54 million in guaranteed money. Cut him outright, and the team takes on $99 million in dead cap. Trading him would be an option. In fact, when asked about getting a fresh start, Tua said that would be dope. But the thing is, teams would likely want Miami to absorb much of that $54 million contract guarantee. Even further, who would even want to trade for Tua? The quarterback market is thin. Only a handful of teams truly need a starter. The Jets, Browns, Vikings, Colts, Raiders, Cardinals, maybe the Steelers. The problem is, only a team in the right system with a quick passing offense and protection in place could realistically make Tua work. And even then, the league knows the stakes. Durability issues, concussion history, and declining mobility are all real. Tua's story hasn't ended, but now the next chapter is completely unknown. If you enjoyed this video, stick with Blitz. Subscribe and check out some of our other content right here.